Hello and welcome back to An Abundance of Thrones, this week's weekly recap rather, of Game of Thrones, in this case Season 5. Garrett here, partnered with Wade.
Hello.
Brad is not with us this week. We would like to express that this is an explicit podcast. It's illicitly explicit. So if language is a problem for you, we recommend turning it off. And we will be going through the most recent episode of Game of Thrones. In this case, it is High Sparrow in detail. So if spoilers are a problem for you, thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Some of the metadata, so to speak, for this episode. Director debut for Game of Thrones, a Mark Mylod, Mylod. This is his first episode for Thrones. He has directed such things as X-Men animated series, Supernatural, Dark Angel, a bunch of other shows kind of in that genre. The writer for this episode, I do believe it is the Double Ds, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. Viewership, again, it declined, 6.71 million. I do still believe that's up from last season. Not totally sure, but we're on a steady decline this season from 1 now to 3. That could be a big part, though, of the episodes leaking, and so people that have already seen it don't need to see it on airtime because they've watched it 2 or 3 times already.
Which episode was season, or what episode number was this?
This is episode 3.
Okay, so we'll probably still see a decline next week, but it should probably kick up, if our thesis is correct, should kick up the next week.
Yeah, I've heard conflicting reports on if 4 episodes leaked or 5. So we'll see how that kind of happens. But we start off this episode in Braavos at the House of Black and White, where a girl wants to serve.
The girl wants to be no one.
But does she? Or does she want to serve just herself? That is the concern by, well, formerly, what was his name?
Jaqen H'ghar?
Yeah, Jaqen H'ghar, thank you.
A man who's not?
A man that is not Jaqen H'ghar. A little concerned that maybe Arya's agenda is that of her own and not to maybe the higher calling of the men with no faces. We transition to King's Landing, of which we visit a few times this episode. We get the wedding of King Tommen and now Queen Margaery. A happy wedding. The happiest of weddings. Well, maybe second happiest wedding we've seen in the entire series. Robb's wedding was not a bad one, although his uncle's not so awesome. But then this one. And we get the immediate bedding.
There was no color for this wedding. What the heck?
There was no color, as no color was needed. It was a standard, run-of-the-mill
royal wedding.
Royal wedding.
With a bedding.
With an official bedding. And Margaery kind of plants a seed about maybe Cersei may or may not be better off in Casterly Rock. Well, really, Margaery would be better with Cersei in Casterly Rock. Maybe part of her ploy we saw from last episode where she's telling Loras that perhaps Cersei will be here, perhaps not.
We may never know.
Or we may.
Or we might.
And then Cersei confronts Margaery. Kind of anything you need to let her know. And this was kind of a weird scene.
Before that, we had Tommen.
There you go.
Kind of grilling her about it.
Yeah, I mean, the seed was planted in his mind, and he confronts Cersei about, wouldn't she be happier in Casterly Rock? That's her home. She always talks so highly about it. This, that, and the other. And Cersei says, my home is where my family is, and my family is here. So.
Try to dismiss the questions, but all right.
Yeah. And then we get the Real Housewives of Westeros. Cersei confronts Margaery And kind of some side little jabs here. Marjorie says, well, she wishes she had wine for the Queen Mother, but it's too early in the day for them to be drinking, so they don't have any. Hinting that Cersei's a bit of a lush, which we all knew. Apparently it runs in the family.
Yep.
And kind of this odd back and forth with the two of them. Cersei saying whatever you need. Marjorie kind of poking at her a little bit more.
Yeah, kind of throwing a little poke every there and then.
Yeah, it's kind of strange.
And if I know anything from watching Game of Thrones is don't piss off a Lannister.
That's correct.
And she's poking the wrong dog now that Tywin's dead.
Yeah, although you makes you wonder what Cersei's
agenda,
followers, loyalties, supporters. That's really the word I'm looking for. How many supporters she really has in the world now that Tywin is of no more. And then I believe we transitioned to Winterfell. It's a little tough for me. It looked like Winterfell Towers, but the Boltons typically reside in Moat Cailin, which we do see. And, that's another thing to mention. Moat Cailin was in the opening credits. The first time we've seen that in the opening credits.
Yep.
Nowhere else, which is fine because we didn't really go anywhere that wasn't represented this week.
To say if they were in Winterfell, they traveled rather quick because they were back in Moat Cailin for how do I say this? Future events. There we go.
Yeah, so we see the Boltons arrive to what Ramsay says their new home, which I can only, interpret as Winterfell. I mean, they wouldn't call Moat Cailin their new home because that's where they're out of.
Yeah.
And so Ramsay is confronted by Roose about the flayed bodies we see in the scene, and Ramsay was sent to collect taxes. The family wouldn't pay their taxes, so he flayed them living, making their son the new lord, and he promptly paid the taxes. Which, to say, the bodies that they used there wasn't an ounce of fat on those bodies. That was some pretty clean muscle tissue.
Considering if they were lords, I mean, yeah.
I mean, usually they've got some meat on them. These bodies were pretty muscular in terms of clean muscle tissue.
Yeah, it's just not really a body you think about it as a lord. Like, the female, maybe.
Yeah, it's tough to say.
Whatever.
More on, Game of Thrones special effects. So, and then Roose is talking to Ramsay about now that he is officially a Bolton, it's high time that he wed the right girl, in order to have a better claim on the North, really is the agenda here.
As given the speech, the great houses keep their power by marriage.
Yep, that's how they grow. They don't keep their power by flaying people, even though that's the Bolton way.
It's the Ramsay way, more like it.
Well, it's the House Bolton's banner is the flayed man, so Ramsay got it from somewhere.
Mm.
Maybe took it a little bit too much to heart.
Yeah, that's what I'm probably thinking.
A little too sadistic.
Well, now you'll know who took
It's true. I mean, now there's no question who was here.
Screw the flag.
Yeah, then we jump to Moat Cailin, for sure, because it's clearly addressed by Sansa and Baelish. Sansa is informed that the wedding proposal that Baelish was talking about was not for himself, but was for Sansa. And she is highly resistant, as the Boltons are responsible for killing and betraying her family.
Poor girl.
Making faces.
Poor girl. Always tossed around, never to do much of her own, unfortunately.
Yep. And Baelish persuades her to stop being a bystander and in the world and become a player. We get a really weird scene transition, though, from them to the two horses on the cliff, which we learn is Brienne and Podrick. It was really kind of a weird lifting up and scene movement. It wasn't like a just clear cut.
Actually, I don't know if her in Moat Cailin, because as Brienne and Podrick were following her, they do raise the issue. Podrick raised the issue that because they go around to lose sight, but Brienne says, "Oh, I know where they're going, so it doesn't matter."
Yeah.
So is it questionable that we are actually in?
Well, in that scene, it was very clearly Moat Cailin, but where we see the Boltons later, it was confusing because the towers looked a lot like Winterfell, and Ramsay says their new home. Now, maybe Ramsay never resided in Moat Cailin because he was a bastard, and so now it's a new home for him, which would make sense. But going back, we'll address a couple issues or concepts in a little bit. But we see Brienne and Podrick. Podrick shares the story of being pardoned by Tywin because his last name was Payne. Now, I wondered why that was significant, but Ilan Payne was part of the court, and he was the executioner who also, in previous events prior to the show, had his tongue removed. Character, not actor. So maybe there's a connection there. I'm not really sure the importance of House Payne as to why Tywin would pardon Podrick for a ham stealing incident. But
Borrowing.
Borrowing incident. Yes, thank you. And then Brienne expresses that she's sorry for always snapping at Pod. Pod's got a nice little outlook on life on,
oh yeah,
if you didn't snap at me, I wouldn't learn anything. I mean, Pod's optimism and way of looking at the world is, good on him.
There's a reason why he's still a squire. He doesn't know how to play the game.
That's true. But Brienne tells him that she's going to train him to fight and ride. She can't knight him. And Podrick says, that's okay. I think the fighting part's more important anyway.
I think surviving is better.
More important than a title. So I'm with Pod on that one. And then we get the story as to why Brienne liked Renly so much. He was the only one that was kind to her when all the other boys were making fun of her lumbering giantness and called her Brienne the Beauty, poking fun of her not being an attractive girl. But Renly, because his interests are elsewhere, had no problem spending time and showing kindness, knowing that it wasn't after either aspect. And Brienne thanked him for it because it distracted her from all the other people.
Such a nice boy.
Mm-hmm. We go to the wall. Right after Brienne talks about the face of the shadow was Stannis, we cut to the wall and cut to Stannis, who is re-offering or whatnot to Jon for his lordship and the name of Stark. And Jon refuses. Not only has he sworn a vow, but he now holds a prestigious title, so to speak, in the Night's Watch, and expresses his place is there. Although this whole interaction, Jon is able to refuse Stannis while still retain Stannis' respect, I felt.
Yeah, it's still, thank you for the offer, but my place is here.
But he refuses a king, and the king still is like, well, okay, well, you're the Lord Commander, this is your decision. I'm not taking it away from you. I'm not demeaning you by it. I've still got a very kind of cordial respect both ways on this.
There's a very cordial respect, and let's be honest, you still need the wall.
Yeah, but Stannis could have been a total dick to him and just left and been, none the wiser, no better off one way or the other, but he chose to be a little bit more honorable and tactful.
Of course, you also could, just the tradition of the Night's Watch does come with the honorables saying, how do I say this? By disrespecting the Night's Watch and continuing to pressure Jon, and if Jon takes the title, he disrespects that and is a, deserter, which is punishable by death, as we learned in the very first episode.
Yep.
So, I think Stannis sees it as, you're holding true to your oath, and I respect that.
Yep. I may not agree with it, but I at least respect that choice. And then Davos, good old Davos Seaworth, the hand of the king, hangs back a little bit and expresses to Jon that in the vow for the Night's Watch, one of the lines is, "I am the shield that guards the realm of man."
Realm?
Realm, something like that. And Davos expresses that although he's not a learned man, that maybe the best place to protect the most people is not sitting at a castle at the edge of the world. And I gotta say, Davos has a point here.
Yes, but the thing is, what kind of people would Jon be protecting if he wasn't at the wall?
The point is that with the Boltons holding the North will suffer. And in order to protect the most people, maybe Jon assist in securing the North for Stannis and restoring order.
I still doubt that with the ever-present looming darkness.
That's the ploy they're saying. That's the political agenda or message they're expressing to Jon.
I just disagree with it.
It's fine. You're entitled to your opinion, even if it's wrong. We transition back to Braavos, the House of Black and White, and a girl who apparently has had a little bit more knowledge and training of the Men Without Faces, confronts Arya and asks her who she is while beating her. Arya gets to the breaking point, about ready to pull out Needle when a man who is not a man, or a man who is no one, rather, I'm sure he's still a man. He's not an unsolid. Asks what's going on, and the girl says they're playing the game of faces, to which is expressed Arya is not ready. And when she says that she is, he points out that, well, if you're supposed to be no one, why are you surrounded by Arya Stark's sword and Arya Stark's clothes and Arya Stark's stolen gold? A man wonders how no one has all this.
They're surrounded by Arya Stark's things.
Exactly. So we cut to Arya pitching all of her goods into the water, from her clothes to her stolen gold to her iron coin, and then the hard decision of Needle.
You kind of had a moment of relief for this one.
I did, because it very much looked like she was going to toss Needle, and that would have been a blow to everybody. In the book, she hides it under a brick that are steps, either within the town or leading up to the House of Black and White. We had a slight variation here where she hides it in some rocks by the water, but it was good enough for me. Interestingly, this is, the first time we've seen Arya in a dress since the first or second episode of the show. She must not be too happy about that.
Nope.
A bit of a tomboy, that one. And then she's invited to help wash a body, in which she asks what happens after that, and she gets a bit of a glare. Kind of a you-know-nothing glare.
You know nothing, Arya Stark.
That's
like
fine.
your brother. Well, kind of half-brother.
That's right. Rumored half-brother, if we want to feed into the conspiracy theories out there. As many would say that Jon may or may not actually be Ned's child at all.
Stay tuned.
Okay, so following back up with Sansa and Ramsay, again, if we're in Winterfell, if we were in Winterfell before, then we pick up in there. Otherwise, we could be in Moat Cailin. Again, it was a little confusing watching the show. If you know, let us know. Please, correct us. Sansa's introduced to Ramsay. She plays the political part with Bolton and is polite and cordial. And Ramsay's pretty happy to meet her at the despise of his harem, so to speak. A bunch of women who were not very happy to see.
Kind of looking down.
Yeah, they weren't super thrilled with the situation. And Sansa's taken up to her room where she can bathe, and an elder lady, I can only imagine as a handmaiden, expresses that the North remembers and says, "Welcome home." So that's what led me to believe we were in Winterfell. But Moat Cailin also resides in the north too, so it could be a general welcome home to the north, or it could be welcome home to Winterfell if that's where we're at.
It almost kind of makes me think there is a quote-unquote resistance. There's someone who's near. It's the North remembers. It's like, okay, we remember who rules the North.
We know there's
it's
a resistance.
Not these people.
We know there's a resistance because the people that Ramsay flayed expressed that the one true Warden of the North will always be a Stark.
And the Raven Scroll that Jon got in...
Or that Stannis got at the wall that was fed over to Jon from the Mormont clan was that they will only pledge themselves to the true king in the North, of which that name would be Stark.
Yep.
So we know that the North is very loyal to the Stark house. We go back to King's Landing, where we find ourselves in a brothel, an old man on his knees, choosing which face of the seven-faced god he would worship that day. And we find out that this is one and only the High Septim.
I'm going to believe the high leader of the religion in Westeros, at least
yes.
the major religion.
He's like essentially the Pope for the seven-faced god.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he's found in a brothel.
Choosing which maiden to...
Doing what you do in a brothel. And the Sparrows, the Sparrow clan, who are the fanatics revolving around the seven-faced god, feel he needs to be punished for heresy and for being a sinner by visiting said brothel. So they take him out in public, naked. They whap his hands every time that he tries to cover himself up. So he has to walk through the streets naked and exposed. And then apparently they beat him and leave him bloody on the steps.
To which we then see him standing before the small council.
Yes. He approaches the small council and says...
With clothes on, thank God.
Yeah, finally, he's clothed. Expresses that any attack on him is an attack on the religion. Any assault on his person is a crime, saying that he is the one who supposedly relays the seven-faced god's message to the people.
And the crime is an attack against the many-faced god as well.
That's right. Any attack on him is an attack against that religion directly. And requests that the leader of the Sparrow clan, which we are told they have claimed as the High Sparrow, be executed. It's pretty rash thinking for someone who's supposed to represent a seven-faced god, one of which offers forgiveness and safety. But hey, more hypocrisy from the priest. So Cersei goes to meet up with the High Sparrow to really find out what's going on here. And she finds a modest man wearing no shoes, feeding the poor and starving. And expresses that the High Septim wanted him executed. But she decided to put the High Septim in jail and express that her views are in line with that of the Sparrows for some reason. I'm not really sure what her intent is with this. I mean, you'd think she'd want anybody and everybody to build up her power hold in King's Landing to support her. And yet she aligns herself with essentially an unknown.
Did she see that there may be a change afoot within the major religions, or?
Well, it's unknown what she sees, but she's always out for her own agenda, and then she's aligning herself with somebody who's so humbled that he gives his shoes away to someone who needs them more and wears essentially robes because it's the right thing to do, and it humbles him as a person instead of someone who's power hungry, where she has always been pretty power hungry. So just kind of confused by the alignment here and to what her agenda is.
Well, someone who's humble, let's say she can most likely see that the group, the Sparrows, is kind of a very action-oriented when they find
true.
The issues, kind of more, it's issues with with profaning the religion.
Sure.
And
then
maybe she
she's-
could use that to her advantage. Remember, this
Yeah,
is
but
one of the best players.
Yeah, but at the same time, she's sleeping with her brother, or was, and having bastard kids when married to the king. So she's not exactly this great moral person to be aligning herself with this overly moral group.
One word. Circe.
I mean, we'll just see what happens here. I mean, it's just kind of, it was strange for me a little bit. I'm just trying to connect the dots. And then we transition to Qyburn's chamber. A brief interaction with Circe, but then we see a body on a table covered in a tarp, and then that body starts to flail and fight for its freedom. Kind of strange. Any ideas?
Well, knowing Qyburn and his creepiness, let's go with that he might have something under that, tarp, blanket,
Sure. Cover.
that is not too happy about its particular situation and is writhing for any kind of action.
So you think this is more of a Frankenstein-style experiment than anything else?
Have you been watching? He just like, I'll take that dwarf head and would he take a rat and started dissecting it?
Yeah, he had a rat. He cut the head off of a rat. Doing something with that.
So
The last person, major player we saw him with, though, was the Mountain, who was only mostly dead when we last saw him. Was speared with
fruit.
poison from Oberyn. So we'll see what comes out of that.
But also, he is a healer, so mostly
He's a
dead.
former maester. Yep.
Yep, mostly dead. As you've stated to me when we were watching,
Does not mean all dead.
you need the body.
That's right. Proof. We transition back to the north where Baelish is meeting up with Ramsay, and Ramsay says that he's going to treat Sansa well. He'll never hurt her, and Baelish expressing that that's good because he's grown quite fond of Sansa. And then we get a little bit of an interaction with Roose in that he doesn't care about Sansa's honor in terms of being a virgin or not. All he needs is the name to help secure the North. But a raven had come, or a messenger came from the Eyrie with a message from Cersei for Peter. Did they even say what it was about?
I don't remember that they did.
I don't think that they did, but Roose is very suspicious about any interactions that are to and from the capital.
Noting that the seal was broken.
Noting that it was broken, the message was addressed to Peter, and Roose had opened it and read it and had requested reading the message that before it was sent back. So he's definitely a little bit on edge. He doesn't know who to trust. Just because something's going his way doesn't mean it's going to go his way forever.
As we all know.
So,
I like how we said this was an explicit podcast, but we still
we haven't said anything. It's okay. We only opened the door up for us to be able to say something, but we're so used to behaving on microphone that it's hard to break habits.
Yep.
Finally, we transition to Volantis. This is a place that we did not see in the opening, although I don't think it plays a major role. I think Volantis is more of a junction than necessarily a legitimate city. And Tyrion wants desperately out of his box. He's concerned he's going to lose his mind, and he'd be no good to anybody if he's witless.
Well, he's going to be no value to anyone if he's headless.
This is true. Varys expresses the categories for the slaves. They tattoo flies on their face for dung scoopers, shit scoopers. They essentially different tattoos.
Tears for whores. And
Tears for whores. There were a couple other ones in there.
hammers for builders.
Yep. so that the slaves were easy to identify. No, falsities there. We're introduced to another Red Priestess, which people may know. She was in the Wolverine movie and recently in the Arrow TV show on CW. And we get another call out to Thoros of Myr.
Talk about moving up, isn't she?
She's
in what? X-Men, Wolverine.
Yep.
The Arrow. Now it's like HBO Game of Thrones. She was
in that 47 Ronin movie with Keanu Reeves.
Oh yeah, she was the dragon chick.
Yep. But we get another call out to Thoros of Myr, the only other red priest who many people have seen. We also got a call out to him when Jorah Mormont and Barristan Selmy were talking last season, I think. And his flaming sword. So, and then if you remember, he's the one who brought back the leader of the Brother Without Banners. Now, 7 times, 9 times, whatever it was.
Yeah, he was the one with the flaming sword, the leader of the Banners.
But when Thoros of Myr fought in the revolt against the Mad King, apparently he had a flaming sword. So, just a name to remember that we've seen it. We find out, too, while they're listening to the Red Priestess, that apparently Tyrion is bilingual. And it sounds like Valyrian. The Red Priestess in her speak sounds like she's speaking Valyrian. The words just kind of sound as we've heard Daenerys talk. But Tyrion is picking out words talking about the rock people, meaning the people with the grayscale, all that stuff that he's extrapolating directly from the Red Priestess. So a little bit more to Tyrion than meets the eye. So if you didn't pick up on that, that may prove very handy when he meets up with Daenerys.
Let's not be,
I'm just saying we got a taste of him being bilingual here.
He is a very smart person and knows to use his way around.
Agreed. But no one in the Seven Kingdoms that he knew spoke Valyrian. And yet he understands Valyrian. So I'm just throwing it out there in case the viewers miss that.
When you need to get out in any way, it's good to be able to speak the same language.
Yep. So once again, we find Tyrion where he is the most comfortable, in a brothel. We are greeted by a Daenerys whore, a bare-assed Daenerys lookalike, to which many of the patrons of said brothel are looking for an opportunity to fuck a queen.
Then they never met a queen.
Never met a queen. And Tyrion approaches another whore, and he says that you have no drink, and she says, well, you have no money. He says, well, do I look like somebody who has no money? And he says, up until recently, I was one of the richest men in the world. She laughs, and he expresses that who needs money when you can make a whore laugh? But, much to Tyrion's surprise, he is unable to follow through with the deed. The fucking is off the table for him for some reason.
ED.
After killing Shay, he's got a little performance issue, anxiety maybe. So he goes over to, once again, piss off a wall. And he's confronted by Jorah, who kidnaps Tyrion and says that he's taking Tyrion to the queen. My question is, which queen? If he knows that Cersei's promising a lordship for Tyrion's head, and he's always wanted to go back to Westeros as that's where he was banished, does he take up that offer? Or does he go for love and try to get back in Dany's good graces by presenting a Lannister at her feet?
The cards will tell.
And that's where we got through for this episode. So we didn't get any Dany, which it looks like we're going to get plenty of next episode, as the next episode is called I think it's the Children of the Harpy.
There were a lot of the Sons of the Harpy in the
Sons of the Harpy, that's right.
Yeah, there were a lot of them in the scenes for next episode, so it seems Daenerys may be able to wipe one thorn from her side.
Yep.
Although I still think she's trying to handle everything with a broad brushstroke, and it's kind of falling apart beneath her.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, we'll just kind of see where some of this leads. I mean, a lot of us suspected that maybe Varys was trying to link up with Jorah, as we knew that Jorah was spying on Dany for Varys and the king at the time. So we thought there was maybe a connection there, but apparently that's not. Maybe there hasn't been the greatest communication, if that was Varys' plan. Thinking that maybe when they said the road to Meereen wasn't a physical road, but a connection in Volantis to get into see Dany. But maybe that's not quite going to plan.
Maybe didn't really get to talk to him first before the aforementioned
Kidnapping, abduction.
Lannister napping.
Lana napping. No, that doesn't really work.
Dwarf napping? What? I don't know.
Is it kidnapping if it's a dwarf? Is it dwarf napping?
I don't know. Does it go on a height scale? I'm not sure.
Must be this tall to be not considered a kid. So do you have any predictions or things you may be looking forward to coming up in the following seasons? We're a little short on the episode here, so
yeah, unfortunately we're missing a head.
Yep. Brad likes to throw in a little bit of devil's advocacy or see things that maybe we miss. So unfortunately he's not here to kind of play that, so it's a little bit shorter.
So we're missing about a third of our podcast, but whatever.
That's roughly true.
Considering the time. I'm just kind of waiting for Daenerys to get off the throne and take the fight to Westeros.
Okay. So you're tired of her sitting back and relaxing, and you want her to take a little more action.
Kind of tired of her just sitting around trying to cover everything with, one rule. I'm not going to open the fighting pits. This person offered a trial to the son of the Harpy, but straight up murder the guy who killed the son. So went on one decision, completely turned around on it the next. So I'm just kind of just want to get her going, and hopefully.
Well, we know there's a revolt in Meereen, or at least there was at the end of last episode when she executed the slave. The slaves weren't so happy on being treated like slaves again, I think, is really where they were coming from there. They didn't have a leader on their side or that they could whisper into, and maybe they felt betrayed. But I think Dany had to do that to show the lords or the former masters that I'm not one-sided and this person killed someone else and this is the punishment. So I understand that.
I tried. Do you see what happens?
Yeah. So I think she's trying to express that I have the power here and this is my will. It didn't necessarily go well with the crowd revolt.
It was kind of more. I saw it as, look, I'm treating everyone equal here.
Exactly.
But I guess that's not how some of the.
Well, it's like the slave said, people only understand blood. They don't understand fair or justice or trial. They understand blood.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the slave saw a slave killed. Former slave saw a former slave killed. So, that's where their head's at.
So I guess she'll just have to be, okay, yeah, we got these Sons of the Harpies captured, now behead them all? Just to prove fairness?
Yeah, we'll see what happens. So yeah, the next episode is called Sons of the Harpy. It will be under the same director, so we should see some decent action. We kind of breezed over, actually, or did I not write it down?
What's that?
I want to go back. We didn't talk about it. We revisit the wall. So backtrack here a little bit.
Oh, yes.
We revisit the wall where Jon is delegating tasks, and they need a new... God, I know I had it somewhere. Let me see if I've got it in my notes here. Hold on one second.
Delegates one of the guys as in the new first or head ranger or whatever it was, and then sends another guy who didn't really like his choice of trotting him off to another. Yeah,
so I don't have it written down here, but first we're looking for someone to be a captain of digging out some trenches or something like that.
Latrine.
And a latrine, Captain Latrine.
In case if you...
And they gave it to a ginger, said, good enough ginger. Sounds like a job for a ginger, and they gave it to
Sounds like a
nobody.
good job. Yeah, if people don't know what a latrine is, it's a bathroom.
Yeah, it's a shithole. Literally. Quite literally. A hole for shit.
It's where it goes.
And then he appoints, what's his name? The dickhead.
That'll work.
Acting commander of the Night's Watch at the time appoints him head ranger, as he has more experience than anybody, and a decent enough call. And then his right-hand man, Janice, I think. I want to say Janice Slint, but I'm not sure if that's true. He appoints him head of Grey Castle, Grey Watch. I think it's Grey Watch. And it's refused. Tells him to, I'm not going to go it. That's a frozen shithole. I'm refusing to go. And John confronts him again. So you're refusing a direct order. And he says, you can shove that order up your bastard ass. To which John says,
okay,
you're entitled to your opinion, even if it's wrong. Take him outside. And hey, steward boy, get me my sword. I have to dish out a punishment the only way I know how, by my own hand.
That's kind of odd to me, considering he did that. Because it was one holding up the... traditions of the North, as in the King of the North, whenever the verdict comes down, as he's the one to do it, but yet denies Stannis.
It wasn't even the King of the North. We saw Ned Stark do this at the first episode. It was just kind of the Stark way, and
I know,
he's
that's
a bastard, but that's how he was taught, that I dealt the punishment, and I'm gonna follow it through.
Yeah, he was... denied Stannis, or refused Stannis, sorry, but still kept the tradition of the Lord of the North, even though he is not. When he makes a judgment, he carries it out himself.
Yeah, and I don't think that's so much paying tribute to lordship or anything. It's just kind of how he was taught, how Ned did it. Ned
that's
being...
quotation marks, Daddy did it, and it worked
right.
well so far.
Exactly. Iron Man quote. So yeah, and I love the clip where the guy begs for mercy and John hesitates for a second and goes, yeah, no. And we got a very clear beheading on this one, where we didn't get it with the slave and Marine. We got it with this one. They showed the neck, the head that fell off. It showed the innards and everything of the neck. It was great. It was brilliant work. So yeah, John expressing that, yeah, I may be young. I may not be the Lord Commander some of you wanted, but I am the Lord Commander that the most of you selected, and my word is law.
And here's the price for not following it.
Refuse my order, and that's this is what's going to happen.
Follow my orders, and you may live. Don't follow my orders, and you'll die pretty surely.
This is one of my favorite scenes of this episode because, the guy is trying to play all tough, and then the main guy, or the guy that's appointed head ranger, steps out of the way and pretty much lets the wolves have at him, so to speak. And John, although he hesitates on mercy, follows through with his verdict. Yeah, and I was stoked that it just shows that much more conviction for John, and that this is my rule, this is my say, your punishment is death, I dish it out.
You were holding your breath through this episode quite a bit.
Yeah, I suppose I was.
Arya and John, you were...
I had a couple moments where I was
Don't do
concerned.
it. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
No,
do
no,
it.
you
do it. Do it. Do it. Don't do it. Do it. Do it. Yeah. Good times. So yeah, that was. I'm surprised I didn't have that in my notes. So I'm glad I remembered it though, because that was a good scene. But with that, I think we look forward to the next episode, episode 4. Again, Sons of the Harpy, and I think we'll get a considerably more action this coming episode. We're getting build up, we're getting political plays, we're getting the pieces of the board moving around.
It certainly looked like there'd be a bit more action with multiple Sons of the Harpy running out in broad daylight.
Yep. So let's look forward to some more action next week, and a full recap with Brad to follow. Thanks guys again for listening, and we'll catch you then.